So has your laser been acting up lately and doing some weird things since you've updated the software? Well, xTool has recently done not only a rebrand of going from xTool Creative Space to xTool Studio, but they've done an overhaul of the software. And you can see that in the versioning numbers. They went from 2.7 in xTool Creative Space to 1.0 in xTool Studio. So this is a totally brand new rewrite of the software. And a lot of folks in the community have noticed that xTool software updates differently too. So instead of downloading a new installer each time that there's an update, the software simply updates in place, or it just will show you a progress bar and it downloads and installs that update. You may have to restart the software depending on how big of an update it is. And in fact, if you go to download the old version of the software from the website, then you only get one version behind the current release of the software. And so this has left a lot of people wondering, how do I fix the software, or how do I roll it back if I have an issue? Can this, cause issues with my laser and keep me from being able to do a job? And how do I keep track of the software and roll back if I need to? In this video, I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know. We're going to look at how do you download the xTool software, should you install updates as soon as they're released, how do you roll back your software, and we'll look at how to build a system so that way you can keep track of the software and roll back anytime you need to. So let's get started. Okay, first thing, let's talk about updating the software. I'm sure you've started xTool Studio and you've been given this message several times before, where there's a new version of the software and it's asking you to go ahead and update. Well, when should you do this? Should you always click update now as soon as something comes out? And the answer is actually probably no. Should you always reject updates? And the answer is no to that as well. So it's kind of in between. You need to decide when is a good time to do an update. And my recommendation is don't apply an update if you know you've got a big job coming up, or you know you're going to need to just be productive and get something going with your laser. So try to set aside some time to apply this update and test your device and make sure that it's working as it should be. So when you get this update, this update prompt, you do have the option to just postpone it a little bit, or to just totally skip the version, and it won't pop this up again. It's going to skip this version, but then the next version that is released, it's going to ask you if you want to update. So just keep in mind, do you have the time to test your machine and see if everything's working as it should? If not, just postpone it and go on and do the job that you need to do so you can get through the workload that you were expecting to be able to work on. So let's say that you're in the software and you're ready to pull the trigger on an update and you don't get the message. Well, you can always go up to the top right of the title bar and you can click check for updates. So this kicks off a check for updates and you'll get this prompt if there's a version available. And take note of the versions that are presented. And this is important for you to keep track of. So I'm seeing here that version 1.5.8 is available, and I'm on version 1.4.10. It's important to kind of understand the basics of software versioning here so that way you can kind of know where you stand and what version you're on. The first is a major release. So like I mentioned before, xTool Creative Space was on version 2, but xTool Studio is on version 1. So those were major releases, major changes in the software. The next is a minor release, so version 5. We went from version 4 to version 5 on a minor release. And usually these are just extra features, and most compatibility is maintained between those two versions. And the final number is usually related to fixes. So, and these jump a lot. So, it could go from 8 to 10. And sometimes this doesn't require a reinstall of the software. Some softwares will install this without you knowing and it's just applying a fix. Maybe there's a feature that's not working properly, and that's what a jump from 8 to 10 or something like that would be. So let's apply an update. I've got one ready to go here, so I'm going to go and check for updates. I'm on version 4 and I'm going to roll up to version 5. So let's click update now and see what happens. So you'll see this is what's new about xTool Studio. It does the update in place, and we're not having to just download a completely different installer and close the program and actually install. So this is what we call an in-place update. All right, now that it's done, a lot of times with major releases or updates, you'll have to do a restart. So we'll go ahead and click restart and see what happens. All right, so once the installer finishes, you just tell it that you want to run xTool Studio and click finish. So as with a new installation, a lot of times, or updates that are major updates, you may have to agree to terms of services. So we'll click agree. Okay, so here we are, we're on the latest version, and so to check that, we could just click on this. Actually, we could click on the settings gear, so that's new. We can click on that and click on About xTool Studio, and we'll see we're on version 1.5.8. Okay, so let's say that you've installed this update, and you go to do a project on your laser, and it just totally messes everything up. So how do you roll it back? How do you go back to the previous version that you know works? So to do that, I'm going to minimize the xTool software. So we'll just jump into the xTool website. So from here, we want to click on software and then go to xTool Studio. And you can just click the download button. And then from here, you'll see that they're going to offer us version 1.4. So the current version is 1.5, and they're offering on the website 1.4. So they give you a way to go back to the previous version by default. So that's really handy. So we'll just click download for Windows, and that'll download the installer onto my machine. Once you have the installer, it should go to your downloads folder. So just click on that, double click on the installer, and then we'll go through the steps, just like you're getting it for the first time. So it says completing the xTool Studio setup. So we'll click finish and run xTool Studio. So again, we'll be presented with the terms of use. We'll click agree on that and launch the software. All right, so you can see just to verify, once we started the software, it sees that we're on version 1.4 and it's offering us 1.5. Okay, so that worked great, but let's say hypothetically that you rolled back your software, but your laser's still not working properly. Maybe there's a certain feature that you don't use often, but that was messed up a version or two ago, and maybe you need to roll back to another previous version. And so I'm going to show you a section of the download page where we installed the software previously that's important to know about. And it's a really good resource to know about the changes. So it's the release notes. So if you click on that link, you'll be presented with this page here. And it goes in basically chronological order, where you can start with 1.5 and you'll see all the features, the things that they've put out in 1.5. And an important thing, especially if you're troubleshooting, is to look at the bug fixes. What did they change about the software that was supposed to fix an issue that was known in the previous software? So look at that. Maybe there's something that impacts your laser. And you'll see here are download links to get those versions of 1.5. So maybe we want to roll back to 1.4. Well, of course, that link is there. So we could roll back to 1.3.6. There's the link for it. Or roll all the way back to 1.2.11 and we can get the installer here. Now, this web page is great as a wonderful resource for now. Maybe, put your tinfoil hat on. Maybe one day they take this away and we can't get access to these downloaders, the installers. So maybe it might be a good idea to download a couple of versions behind the current version that you're working on, so that way you have them. So simply, for example, I'm on 1.5. I've got the installer for 1.4 here in my downloads folder. So let's go to 1.3 and we'll download that. And I'll keep, 2 versions behind the current version that I'm working on. So that way I can roll back if I want to anytime that I want, and I don't have to rely on going to their website and counting on xTool having that available. I don't think that they're going to take that down. Obviously, they're very transparent about what they have out here and have made it very accessible, but it might just be easier for you to keep those versions on your computer for you. So in the end, what should a system look like to track the updates and keep on top of where things are with xTool Studio? So what I recommend is first bookmarking this page. Save this in your browser, bookmark it, so that way you can get back to it easily. Anytime that there's an update, you may need to come back here and check on, what are the release notes say, or maybe you need to get that installer for a previous version. And I recommend not only just having this as a resource, but create you a folder on your computer and go ahead and have the installers for those previous versions available. And like I said before, I think maybe the 2 previous versions is probably far enough back. I just caution that if you go so far back, then you run the risk of incompatibility of things that maybe don't match up with the firmware version that is on your current laser. So just keep that in mind. I think 2 versions back is probably a good amount and should help you troubleshoot any issues that you've got going on with your laser.